Welcome back to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Victor's still on vacation, obviously. And okay, today I want to talk to you about Black America. Okay, and first, let me just give you my points real quick, and then I'm going to start with the conclusion. So I don't lose you. First point is that obviously the systemic racism that they say that exists doesn't exist. It's a bunch of made up nonsense. My second point, which is controversial, is that Black America is not Africa. Black America can definitely be successful in a first world country. I'll prove that in a second. And then my third point is that there really is systemic racism, which has destroyed the Black community. And they're just diverting you by the first point, talking about systemic racism that doesn't exist, so that you don't look at the systemic racism that does exist. And my final point, which I'm going to start with, is why is this even important, right? Well, you could just say, if you just wanted to be just basic, you could just say, hey, well, safety. Because if a 25-year-old guy is playing black guy is playing a knockout game with a 75-year-old grandma, she doesn't have a chance. She never sees it coming. You can't say grandma should have been armed. You just can't. I mean, there's no defense. If it's a 25-year-old white guy against a 75-year-old black woman, she doesn't have a chance. Don't do that. And you want to live in a world where that doesn't happen, right? So you could just say that. If you want to go to a higher level thinking, though, as Americans, okay, I would make this argument that Black Americans are so given such a raw deal that they have more reason to be angry at the system and want to destroy the establishment and the system as white people do, who've also been screwed over royally, right? So I mean, this really matters, is what I'm saying. Because if we're just sitting here fighting each other and this and that, and when the system, it's obviously it's not a good scenario. We want to work together so that we can all get back our self-determination and sovereignty, So I think it's a very important subject to discuss. So first point's obviously very easy, and that's that the systemic racism they say exists doesn't exist. Obviously, there's no redlining, there's no Jim Crow, there's none of this. They do this thing and they're like, well, Black people, they don't let you into college, because look, there's not a proportionate amount of and then Harvard's looking at them like, so then Harvard puts in quotas. Now they're denying Asians with really good SAT scores or whatever they do nowadays in favor of Black people with inferior ones. And I mean, there's a lot of factors why that is, but obviously it was ruled that was racist and they had to stop doing it, and now they're suing other schools for doing it. But, I think the Supreme Court ruled on it. Was that in 2023? Anyways. And so, none of this stuff exists. There's a lot of factors why, if you just tell some, kind of smart Black kid in the inner city, and you tell them, hey, dude, if you just do this, if you just study this hard and you just do this, you'll get a free ride to Harvard. But it's pretty hard for him to achieve that in the inner city. It's pretty hard, not having as good teachers, not having a father in the home, obviously. You know what I'm saying? There's just so many different factors involved. But the systemic racism part isn't there. What we know, like with the BLM and then the Black people getting shot, we know the statistics on that. And hey, there are some racist cops who just, there's racist people, but it's not systemic is what I'm saying. It's not nationwide, this is not a thing. So that's obvious. I think we all know that. My second point is the controversial one that says that Black America can do it, can participate fully in a first world country. Now, here's where I'm coming from with this. Like, you'll see a story where there's an African illegal immigrant in London running down the street with a machete chasing a white guy, You'll see that, and then you'll look at X, and then you'll see like 50 Black people in LA just running in a store and just running out with the goods. And you'll be like, man, they're all the same. They're not. They're not the same. I'm not giving in that our Black America is the same as Africans. I'm just not going to give into that because, okay, first of all, my immigration policy. If you don't know me, my immigration policy is simple, right? 1965, they did the Hart-Celler Act, did a whole episode on it, put the link in the description below. Look, anybody who immigrated to the country after 1965 who wouldn't have qualified before 1965 needs to be deported. That's just all there is to it. You can watch that episode if you want to. I'm firm in that position. I'll take nothing less than that. So that being the case, I'm talking about pre-1965 Black Americans. And who were these Black Americans, right? Well, they were slaves. They came from slavery. They were sold onto plantations. They were raised in an American way. Their children were raised in an American way. I mean, their masters read them the Bible. Then the Black people became their own pastors and learned to read. They had their own churches. They created their own form of worship that Christianity had never seen before, and they ended up having all these nice Christian Black people. And then slavery was over. and you just let all these black people just, like, how are they going to do? Are they going to do good in society? And the answer is they kicked butt. If you go back to 1920s, right? So go back 100 years from now. This is under Jim Crow, right? And you can listen to Larry Elder if you want to hear all the numbers. He'll just rattle them off because that's his people. He's a black guy, you know? And obviously, you know, this is his subject. I'm just talking about another people's people. So anyways, but the numbers were just staggering. Like the percentage of black children born into two parents household was higher for black people than for white people in the 1920s. Just try to wrap your head around that. More black kids were born into two-parent homes than white kids in the United States of America. It's just unbelievable, you know, because today I believe 75% of black children are born into single-parent homes. Absurd. Absolutely absurd. That community has been crushed, right? Now, but my point from the 1920s is that they could make it. They can make it. They made it even under Jim Crow. And under Jim Crow, they had a lot of advantages, I'll just tell you, because they could make their own economy. And you had to spend black money at black businesses. You had to, because nobody wanted your money at the other businesses. And so you had black people patronize and own, so their money just stayed there, right? White people didn't work in those black businesses, but black people worked in white businesses. So black people were siphoning money off the white economy and bringing it into this self-contained economy. So all that white money was coming in, and their money pile was just growing. They made a Black Wall Street in Tulsa, ended up getting burnt down. Tragic story, covered another time. But I do plan to cover it another time. Anyways, so, and they just, you know, they had black hotels, and they just did really good. Then something happened, okay? And that's where the systemic racism comes in. Now, I'm not going where you think I'm going with this. That is a big part of the problem. The New Deal in the 1930s is a big part of the problem. But it's not systemic racism, because if you create all these welfare programs and stuff like that, right? But they apply to everybody, and then they destroy one community, that's not systemic racism. Because if white people had the same propensity as black people, they would have developed the dependency on welfare and just became bums, single parent bums. You know what I mean? But they didn't. So it wasn't targeting the black community. It was targeting everybody and whoever happened to be susceptible to that because they didn't have the right character, you know? And it was the black people. So that is a part of the problem. But I'm going to talk about something even more important. My claim here is that since the 1960s, the United States government has systematically oppressed black people by propping up trash leadership, absolute trash leadership since the 1960s. Just think about it. Every black leader you know is a piece of garbage. How is that possible? There's a lot of good black people in this country. How is every one of the leaders in there? Everyone who gets a visit to the White House is a piece of garbage. How is that? Well, it's because they're being propped up by the system. It started with Martin Luther King Jr. Now, we covered this. I have a 2-episode series on Malcolm X and a 1-episode on Martin Luther King Jr. I'll put those all in the description below. The Malcolm X one had to be 2 because it was so fascinating and so long. But basically what had happened is at one point in the 60s, the black people are over it. And they got 1 million men marching towards Washington, D.C. They're on buses, they're walking, they're hitchhiking, right? And they're freaking furious. And the system says, dang, it's over. It's over. We lost, you know? And so what they do is they get Martin Luther King Jr. as well as 4 of the civil rights leaders. They just beg them and they say, you've got to get them to go home, right? If you just get these angry black men to go home, they're all on their way here, just get them to go home, right? You can bring back nice black people later. We'll fund the entire 1 million man march. We'll tell you where you can go, when you can come, what gate you can't pass, where the health stations will be, and it was all controlled. And Martin Luther King Jr. sold out his people, along with the other civil rights leaders. Malcolm X did not sell out his people. Ever since then, we've had terrible black leadership in this country, you know? You look at just Reverend Jesse Jackson, like race hustler, grifter. Al Sharpton is just the worst. Like this guy, he freaking, what is it? Okay, 1987 was Tawana, I can't remember her last name. I'll put her on the screen. But it's this girl, and they bring her in covered in, she's been gone for 4 days. They find her covered in feces. The N-word is written on her, naked chest, but like it had been written like she was looking in a mirror. So it was written backwards, you know? And they do this whole hoax and they say, oh, it was all these whites. It was the prosecutor. It was the senior cops and this and that. And they do this thing. It comes out to be a complete scam. And Al Sharpton's behind it. That's 1987, right? And he went to the White House all the way until last time he went was 2021, early in the year at the end of Biden. That's the last time he went, you know? And so just imagine, you just got these crap race hustler leaders telling the black community what they should be angry at. You shouldn't be angry at the fatherless epidemic. You should be angry because look what happened to Tawana. Oh, come on, you've got to be kidding me. It's just BLM. Because we know all about what I'm saying right now. We've just been through BLM, And now we have Benjamin Crump. And honestly, I researched this guy for this episode. He's not the best, but I literally can't call him like a race hustler. I mean, it's close. It's in the ballpark, but I can't really do it because one is not like the other. So far, he's not a Reverend Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton. But just look how bad their leadership is. And let me say another point about why this is important, okay? So white people are very individualistic. We know this. Okay. I was texting back and forth with Eric Hunt, who I did in the Holocaust series. And he was like, man, I'm putting together all this stuff and I'm working on all these things. And man, our people won't support us $1, And I'm like, no, of course they won't support. They don't support me $1. I already know because they're so wildly individualistic. There's pros and cons. I already know. They're not just going to follow somebody. Do you know what I mean? And black people, on the other hand, have the problem that what's a pro and a con too is that they more easily follow leadership that's put in front of them. Okay, because if you put some white guy on TV and he's like, hey, it's a white man, you need to start cheating on your wife. You need to cheat on your neighbor's wife. Have some kids in his house. We can have. I shut it off. I'm just not listening to that crap. You know what I mean? My character comes from inside. I don't listen to this nonsense. And if I start spitting nonsense on you on this channel, you would just click off like this dude's lying to me. You know what I mean? He just got no proof of this or whatever. Because we just don't operate like that. Black people, they're more susceptible to bad leadership. So you can't just destroy the white community by white communities like the United States by just putting bad leadership there because we just won't follow them. The problem with black people is that they will follow them. Now, that's a good trait if you have a really good leader. If you have a really good leader, all the black people will fall in line. Perfect. You have a good white leader, and all these individualistic white guys, they ain't going to be pitching at the time. They're not going to, And so in the white community, it is literally a problem that we have to fix or just be erased from history. Because like if I had somebody contact me and be like, hey, we're getting your channel, all these other channels, because I don't make any money off the channel. Then they're like, hey, you're not going to get paid. But just come under our banner and then everybody will get more views and we'll all work. Yeah, I'll do it. If they're about the right thing and they're not censoring my, because I've got to force myself too, because that's what we have to do as white people. But the problem with black people is that they follow leadership, and if the leadership is bad, so, that's why the problem is that's why like BLM, like it doesn't make any sense, it never made any sense from the very beginning, but it didn't matter that it made sense. Like you're trying to tell them, listen, bro, you're trying to like a Black Lives Matter person. You're like, listen, what percentages of, how many black men were killed, unarmed black men were killed by cops in this year? Doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter because they're listening to their terrible leadership, and their BLM leadership's buying mansions and corrupt as all get out. And hey, burn down your own neighborhood. Why are you telling them to burn down their own neighborhood? Why don't you tell them to go to white neighborhoods or where the cops live? I don't know, just something else, anything other than that, So anyways, another way though that there's this systemic racism, it's again with leadership, right, is in music. Okay, because listen, they got the trashiest music imaginable. Like, how is this not on purpose? That the music that they listen to just corrupts them and destroys their communities, And you can't say that with any other people. Like, you can't say, oh, white people in your country music, talking about, drinking a beer and hanging out with your dog. And you know what I mean? It's not trying to destroy our community, And if it is, we wouldn't tolerate it. We just wouldn't listen to it, And so, like, there's a lot of stuff involving the deep state, involving, like, being, or with the federal government, I should say, not deep state. A lot of involvement with the rappers and a lot of that stuff. There's, all these stories about, the forced homosexual stuff that they have to do in order to get into the scene. And it's very controlled is what I'm saying. And the other problem with that is that, like, if you made the music, why are they listening to it? Like, how is this kid listening to it? Why doesn't his dad? Oh, obviously, 75% don't have a father just to tell him, hey, knock that off. Just don't even listen to that garbage. We're not that garbage. Just don't even have them. So then you're just susceptible to it. You listen to it and you don't just have no leadership in your life. And it's just absolute crap. So, and the way I would say to combat this for the black community, I would say, listen, somebody who's not controlled, say yay. I've never listened to Kanye West music, but say yay, right? Instead of taking that white, I think she was white, out on the, with no clothes on to the show because you're being a crappy role model, why not make some decent music that's wholesome and uplifts your people, that leads them in the way that they should live their lives, in order to be happy and successful. Don't you want your people to be happy and successful? what, and I know he's not the worst, but like these other rappers that are just rapping about drugs and stuff like that, and degrading women and stuff like that, they're just destroying their communities. And the black people are so susceptible. They don't have the father to stop them, and they just follow. They follow. They follow. And on the last point, I mean, that I had said about black people having their civil rights leaders propped up and just terrible ones. You could make the argument. You could say, Jack, but there are no good black leaders. There are. They just aren't popped up. They aren't propped up, because I did that episode on Malcolm X, and some wonderful person, and I cannot remember who it is, or I'd give you total credit, I think on Rumble, said, hey, Jack, because I said in the episode, I so would love to meet Malcolm X. Of course, he's been dead, many years. And a guy messaged and he said, hey, oh, no, he's still here. There's Malcolm X now. His name's Io Kamathi. I'm going to write the name on the screen in post-production so you can see how it's spelled because it's unusual. Look him up. Just look him up. Go on Rumble, look him up, look up any interview he's done. The guy's freaking great. He's freaking great, and he's there. He's available. He wants to help his people, and they're not going to prop him up. They're going to prop up. I don't know why. I don't even care why. It is systemically racist that they're doing it, regardless of why. Could it be a bunch of white people who are just really wicked and racist and just want to destroy his whole community? I don't know. Or it just could be, I don't know, a fun game. I have no idea. But no matter what it happens, and Io Kamathi is proof that there is good leaders. Malcolm X is proof. He's not here with us today, but he is proof that they can. And they only got 18 months of leadership because he was a whack job before his last 18 months of his life. But anyways, this is what I got for you. I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's cool to think about. I would like to, this is my theory. These are all my theories. So, and I have run all these by Victor and he agrees, mostly. And so if you got any points that I missed, or you got something to say that I got wrong, go ahead and put it in the description below. I'm not going to buy it though if you just tell me that Black America, pre-1965, Black America is the same as Africa and the people with the machetes. It's just, I've already proven that. Larry Elder's got all the numbers to prove it, Anyways, that's all I got for you. One more week next week is no Victor, and then after that he'll return. And hope to see you next week. Have a great weekend.